Okay, Johnny, so we've got a fabulous selection of parts here, and I mean, for me, this really is car porn. I absolutely love this stuff because it is like looking at racing car exhaust. I mean, the finest quality, beautiful tolerances. It's lovely stuff. It's a shame to hide it underneath the car, really. But let's take a typical customer, me. I come to you and I say, right, I want an exhaust on my car. Now, from manifold to tip, there are lots of options. So just talk us through each of the stages, benefits, and decisions that I need to make in choosing the right exhaust for my car.
Starting with the manifolds, this is obviously what fits, directly to the motor. This is kind of where you would consider the power to be made.
Yeah.
So these items really are very much a race-focused item. It deletes the cat. Right. And the reason that we do that is not purely from a performance point of view, because you can get very high quality cats now which flow an awful lot of power and aren't really any restriction. But in this application, there's not the room to get the necessary primary lengths, the collector, and the position all correct, plus have a cat in there as well.
Right, okay.
So we make power.
So it's to get the optimum header rather than to just delete the cat for the sake of it.
Yeah. I mean, if you took the standard manifold and just chopped the cat out of it, you'd probably make 5 horsepower, something like that, because there's actually not an awful lot of restriction there at all. Whereas, believe it or not, something like this, directly bolt on to your car, is going to make upwards of 30 horsepower.
Why are standard headers so poor then?
I think it's purely an emissions thing, really, and a packaging thing. So you got to think Porsche, between this point and this point, have to fit a big old cat in there. And also it all needs to be easy to make, and I mean, even on a car of this caliber, it still needs to be fairly cheap to manufacture. So it's an obvious question to ask, because most people would think a GT3 engine is pretty maxed out anyway. So how can you possibly get 30 plus horsepower just by changing the manifolds? But you're right, with standard road car packaging, fitting in the cat and the tolerances, they just can't make this is effectively a race exhaust, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, completely. You look at a GT3 exhaust, or you look at the GTE exhaust, the manifolds look, kind of spookily similar to this.
Let's move through then to where you would normally have the big side silencers, and you've got a couple of options then. You can, well, there's several options actually. You could keep the silencers and have a center pipe in the middle. You can bypass the center, the side exhaust and delete them. Talk us through that part of it.
Yeah, so I mean, as you've touched on, and where again we kind of try to set ourselves apart, is if you want to buy the manifolds, great, just buy the manifolds. If you want to buy just the center, great, just do that. Importantly, all of our parts will fit with the corresponding Porsche parts. And what that does mean is it's a bit of a headache in terms of finding what the ultimate solution is. But it does mean that we've got so many different options, so you've got a much better chance of reaching the kind of ultimate end goal, really. So we've got almost 30 different configurations now, with a selection of our parts and the Porsche parts. But yeah, so the next point would be the side silencer bypass. So this is available with a valve or without a valve, which we've got here.
I mean, these are incredibly light.
Yeah, so this is like 850 grams, and the stock side silencers are 10 kilos. So it's a pretty significant drop in weight. But we've added a V-band connector onto this, so we can either fit with valves, or you can fit just with a straight pipe.
Okay.
So that would go to a valveless system.
Right, so why would somebody keep the valves or not keep the valves? This is important to me as well.
Yeah, I think, there's obviously the obvious. There's, you know, that's like 150 grams.
Yeah.
This is 350 grams. It's not a lot, but it all adds up.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is a weight disparity.
Yeah.
However, if you're looking just for ultimate performance, deleting the valves is a nice option. You know,
But it means the car is then noisy all of the time.
Yeah.
You haven't got the function of the exhaust button inside.
No.
So if you use the car on the road as well, I know they always open once you're at full throttle, but if you're just using the car just normally, you wouldn't have that. You can have it quieter if you've still got the valves.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the stock, these work with the stock valve control. So you hit the button inside the car, you can make it quiet or loud.
Yeah.
However, you know, the stock Porsche valve control is a little bit funny in the sense that when you have the button open, the valves will be open at idle.
Yeah.
When you set off over about 2 or 3 miles an hour, the valves will then close again until 3,800 RPM. And that's to do with drive-by law, emissions, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay. Well, I mistakenly thought once you pressed the button and they were open all the time.
No, so that would be then a benefit of going this route, because you kind of bypass that system, such that if you want more noise low down, then you can achieve that as well. Ultimately, over 3,800 RPM, the valves sit open anyway, so you kind of get 99.9% the same sound. Yeah. But if you want to just drop a little bit more weight and just have a little bit more low down noise, then you know, you go this option. From a performance standpoint, it makes absolutely no difference at all. We've tested that on the dyno. So, you know, there was, I think, a little bit of confusion over if you remove the valve, does that affect back pressure and do you lose torque low down? You know, that's talked about quite a lot. But there is absolutely no difference, certainly on this application. With some of the later cars with the particulate filters, there is a very big difference. But that's a whole nother
Well, let's
episode.
move back to the next section, which is the centre box. This is you tell me, this is a silenced one, there's an unsilenced one, or you can use all of the other bits with the standard box.
Yeah, exactly. And we've actually got another centre silencer as well, different. But yeah, I mean, this is basically a complete direct replacement of the standard Porsche centre silencer. This is our silenced version. We say silenced. It's got 2 cans in the valves closed position, such that you've got a bigger delta. When you close the valves, all the exhaust gases are directed through these silencers, and you get, you know, kind of a decent reduction in sound. We also do this without silencers, such that would be more of an application if you were to just do a little mod just for sound, say for instance, a little bit of weight saving. That would probably be the route to go. If you were to do side silencer deletes or manifolds, then you'd probably want to be able to quieten it down some more. Again, it's just this kind of broad range of products which we're trying to offer, just to kind of, you know, there's only so many different ways that you can achieve the same thing, but ultimately it just gives a few different options. We retain the standard tip flange. So you can run stock tips, or you can run all of our tips, of which we've got 8 different options now.
We've got a few here, we'll talk about those in a minute. An
important little feature is just the fact that the exhaust actually protrudes past the flange, which does actually make quite a big difference to the sound. So that little detail's in there. And also you'll notice that there's a nice big balance pipe between the 2 banks. Some centre silencer deletes don't have that. The Porsche centre silencer does. If you look through into the tips, you can see there's a big loop. This kind of promotes scavenging from each bank. Helps to get a better charge and pull the exhaust gases out as much as possible. And also just kind of balances the sound as well. So you get quite a nasty pressure wave if you don't have this balance pipe, and it can be quite boomy low down. So it's small gains, you know, but it's
listening
important.
To you talk, there's a lot of R&D gone into this, isn't there? Yeah,
there is. I mean, you know, I think it's sometimes easy to look at a part like that, and you know, you can kind of think, well, there's not really a lot to it, but there is in the background. You know, once you get it nailed, then that's where you go. But like we discussed earlier, you know, the gauge of the titanium here is different to the gauge of the titanium here, is different to the gauge of the titanium here. And we could do that all in one. It would be easier and it would be cheaper. However, you know, that's going to give us a better product just having all these little details kind of thought about as well.
Well, somebody once said to me, a knowledgeable person, that if you think of your engine as just a unit to process air and fuel, the important things are the inlet to a certain extent, but inlets are usually plenty, but the exhaust is the most limiting factor.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's one thing that you touched on earlier. You know, you'd say like, how did these manifolds make so much power? How have Porsche got it so wrong? Well, they haven't, but there's a lot of limitations, and a lot of limitations regarding emissions mostly, which are pretty much all controlled in the exhaust. The efficiency of the motor is, you know, is kind of governed through the design of the motor in the first instance, which Porsche have done a phenomenal job with when you think of the capacity and the output that you get out of it. But the airbox, the throttle body, the inlet plenum, the way in which the motor works, you know, there's really, really tiny gains to be had there. You know, there's like 5 and 10 horsepower with thousands of pounds spent. However, the exhaust, getting the air out, you know, there's big gains to be had for, you know, relatively decent amount of money. So.
Let's finish at the tips. I know you haven't got all the options here, but the exhaust tips, is it a vanity decision or is there a performance element involved in that as well?
There is actually. I mean, we've got, you know, this is our megaphone tips, titanium. They're 700 grams.
That's nothing. What's the standard one?
1.2 kilos. So again, you know, from a percentage point of view, it's a nice gain. There's a couple of things which we kind of gain in. Obviously, the aesthetic. We've got different options which are purely, you know, do you like this or do you like that? You know, whichever you prefer the look of.
Does that make much difference to the sound, the actual tip?
It does actually, because we've got this trumpet design. So in terms of
it reminds me of my old BSA motorbike, the old megaphone, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit of a kind of hark back
to... Sorry, they used to make motorcycles. I know you're too young.
I don't know, I only know stuff about cars anyway. But no, in terms of performance, yes, there is a little bit of a gain in terms of sound. Importantly, we start at 80 mil at the start of the tip, which is obviously more than what we've got in the exhaust. The standard tips drop down to around about 55 mil, which actually is a restrictor.
Right,
so, the standard tips have got a little drop down internally, which is a little bit sound control, and also just Porsche's way of holding a little bit back. So you'll notice the GT3 RS comes with titanium tips, and they're 80 mil all the way through. So, you know, Porsche play these little tricks, and it's sometimes a little way. You know, in reality, if you fit these to your car and that was the only mod, then, you know, there's not really any tangible gains in terms of horsepower, but every little helps, and that's what it's all about, really.
There's also these very similar looking ones, but with an additional banding round the end. Why have you done that? Yeah,
so these are a little bit lighter. The flange design's very slightly scalloped out, so we've got some more weight out of the flange. The tips are actually dropped down to 0.5 of a mil titanium, which, you know, if you feel at that point, you can actually kind of move them. There's not an awful lot of structure there. And the reason why we've got this extra banding around the tip there is with the exhaust pulses coming out of the tip, you would get, you know, fatigue over time. So we add that band there, which just basically adds strength. So that's to allow us to run a thinner gauge, but still have the durability there as well. This is an absolute, you know, the lightest possible option.
But will it go a delicious shade of blue as it gets hot?
Only if you drive it nice and fast.
No problem with that. There's a couple of other options. This is the brand new one that you've done with the rolled ends. This is made of Inconel, isn't it? Which I always remember being the bespoke choice for Formula One exhaust. So I can't believe I can get something in Inconel. What was the reasoning behind that? But it's quite heavy, isn't it?
It is. I mean, these are actually heavier than the stock tips.
Right.
This option is more down the road of, you know, an OEM plus kind of appearance. So it's double wall. It has the internal megaphone design inside of the tip.
Okay.
And then we run a second skin around the outside, which has got this rolled detail.
Yeah, beautiful.
It is possible to roll titanium in this way, but it's kind of cost inhibitive in terms of the amount of money required to get to the point of having the tooling for a specific set, and we've got multiple versions for different models. So say for instance your 991.2 GT3 has a different bumper profile to 991.1 GT3 and GT3 RS 1.1 and 0.2. So for each of these we've got 4 different versions as well. So it just kind of gets to the point which, you know, it just wouldn't make sense really. So that's why we've gone down the route of Inconel there.
Final option, which I might well need, is these silence tips for presumably just for track day use.
Yeah, exactly. So again, these can be used with a completely stock exhaust if necessary. Basically, it's a bolt-on solution which drops around about 5 to 6 decibels, which you can keep in your boot. If you need to use them,
it's a 2-minute job, isn't it?
Exactly. So it's a 3-bolt flange. It takes 2 or 3 minutes. The beauty of the titanium as well is that it cools down really quickly. So nice and easy to swap, and that's just literally a direct bolt-on solution to reduce the decibel level. And they're actually lighter still than the stock tips as well.
Okay.